Let's dive into the fascinating history of psychiatry. Now, you might think of it as a straight line of progress, but it's not like that at all. It's really more like a giant pendulum, swinging back and forth over the centuries between totally different ideas about the mind, the brain, and what it even means to be mentally ill. So, here's our roadmap for this journey. We're going to start way back at the ancient roots, then look at the rise of asylums. After that, we'll tackle the huge debate between mind and brain theories, then get into the controversial era of deinstitutionalization, and finally, we'll see where the field is headed today.
Okay, let's jump in. We're starting thousands of years ago. Back then, trying to figure out mental distress wasn't just a medical thing. No, it was all wrapped up in philosophy, religion, and the very first attempts at science.
And right away, you can see that first big pendulum swing. For a long time, most people thought mental illness was caused by supernatural stuff, angry gods or demonic possession. But then this Greek doctor, Hippocrates, came along and said, whoa, wait a minute, this is a disease of the brain. The Romans ran with that idea, but then after the empire fell, whoosh, the pendulum swung right back to supernatural explanations for hundreds of years.
I mean, these two ways of thinking could not be more different. On one hand, you have the idea that it's a punishment from the gods. But on the other, you have Hippocrates proposing a medical model. He argued that things like melancholia were caused by an imbalance of the body's four fluids, or humors, and that the problem was located in the brain. For its time, this was an absolutely revolutionary step toward a biological understanding.
All right, let's fast forward to the 18th century. A brand new idea pops up, the asylum. The plan was to create special places just to care for the mentally ill. But the big question that hung over this whole era was, would these places actually be sanctuaries for healing, or would they become something much, much darker? The whole movement started from a really good place. It was this noble, humanitarian idea. You had people like Philippe Pinel in France who became famous for literally unchaining patients. The dream was to build these therapeutic communities, these safe havens where people could get better with some dignity.
But the reality? Well, it was a totally different story. That beautiful ideal quickly fell apart. As these places got massively overcrowded and their funding was slashed, their mission changed. They stopped being about treatment and became more about just warehousing people. They offered almost no real therapy, and honestly, this failure is exactly what set the stage for their eventual collapse.
So, this brings us to one of the biggest showdowns in the history of medicine. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the pendulum swings again, and this time it sparks a massive debate about the real cause of mental illness. Is it a problem with the brain, or is it all in the mind?
Okay, so you had two heavyweights in this fight. In one corner, there was Emil Kraepelin. He was all about biology, meticulously describing and classifying disorders based on how they played out over time. He's the one who first separated manic depressive illness from what he called dementia praecox, which we now call schizophrenia. And in the other corner, Sigmund Freud. I'm sure you've heard of him. He argued the problem wasn't the physical brain at all, but the unconscious mind and our hidden childhood experiences.
Then, in the 1950s, something happened that just completely changed the game. A bombshell. The discovery of chlorpromazine. It was the first drug that actually worked for psychosis, and it was proof, hard, chemical proof, that you could treat severe mental symptoms by acting directly on the brain. This sent the pendulum swinging hard and fast back to the biological side.
So, after all that back and forth, what did we learn? Well, we finally landed on the approach that's standard today, the biopsychosocial model. And the truly revolutionary thing about it was that it stopped the pointless either-or fight. It says, hey, it's not mind versus brain. Mental illness comes from a complex mix of our biology, our psychology, and our social world. It's all connected. Now, this biological revolution, combined with a huge push for patients' rights, kicked off one of the biggest social experiments in psychiatric history, the plan to empty out all those massive state hospitals and move care into the community. But you have to ask yourself, why? After building this huge asylum system for centuries, why suddenly tear it all down? What on earth was going on that made this seem like the best path forward all of a sudden?
Well, it was really a perfect storm of factors. For one thing, you had new drugs like chlorpromazine that could control symptoms, which meant people didn't have to be locked up. Then, the public was starting to see just how horrific conditions were inside these places. And on top of all that, you had a powerful new patients' rights movement demanding more humane treatment.
So the idea, the promise, was incredible. The goal was compassionate care right in the community.
Less stigma, better treatment. But the reality? Well, it was often a disaster. We failed to build the community support systems that people needed. So for many, this policy didn't lead to freedom. It led to homelessness, neglect, and even prison. It was a classic double-edged sword.
And that brings us right up to today. After learning all these hard lessons from a long, complicated history, where is psychiatry going now? Well, the focus is finally on stopping those wild pendulum swings and building a future that's truly integrated.
The foundation for all of this is that biopsychosocial framework we just talked about. It's this core understanding that you just can't separate the brain from the mind, or the person from their environment. Good treatment means looking at the whole picture, the biology, the psychology, and the social situation a person is in.
And the future is all about making care more personal, more accessible, and way smarter. We're talking about precision medicine, using things like genetics to tailor treatment to you, specifically. We're using technology, like apps and even AI, to help with assessment and therapy. And we're finally integrating mental health into regular primary care so we can catch problems earlier and make it normal to ask for help.
So that leaves us with one last really important question. As we get excited about all this new technology and biology, what are the vital lessons from our past that we absolutely cannot afford to forget? From the good intentions of the asylum reformers to the devastating failures of deinstitutionalization, what do we need to remember to make sure the future is actually better?